So my last post was about what it's like to be a PIMO in Jehovah's Witness organisation, meaning physically in, mentally out. So that just basically means people go to meetings, they participate, but they don't actually believe, and they're actually hoping to escape the organisation, but cannot at that point in time for whatever reasons. And there's a lot of comments where people have shared their stories, who are actually PIMOs at the minute. So whilst they still are going to meetings, being a Jehovah's Witness, they actually want to leave, but it's not always possible. And obviously, for those who have never been Jehovah's Witnesses, who have not been in that situation, it can be a bit hard to understand why people just don't leave. And obviously, also the fact that a lot of witnesses that leave know they will lose their family and their friends, and they will be shunning, especially if they get disfellowshipped or disassociated, like I was. Although some manage to fade away, meaning they just stop attending and are able to carry on living normally. The problem is that why is it not easy to leave? So, as someone who is also studying psychology with counselling, and I know a thing or two about domestic abuse and trauma and abusive relationships through my own experience or through observation, it's not always easy to leave, because if it was, people wouldn't be staying in horrible situations where they are being abused or traumatized. It would be easy and everybody would do it, but it's not, because there's a lot of psychological processes involved that make leaving an abusive situation hard, such as trauma bonds, cognitive dissonance, there's gaslighting, there's fear, sometimes outright danger, like stalking, harassment, injury, violence. There's all these things to add into it, and especially when there's social dynamics such as children involved, families and whatnot. People are trapped, and unless you've been in that situation, it's very easy to say like, well, I would just leave. Don't forget, people who are being abused, they get to a point where they don't even trust their own judgment anymore. They get to a point where they have the abuser's voice in their head, and it's permeated their whole nervous system. And whether that's a religious organisation or a relationship or even friendship or work situation, any kind of situation, by the time you get to a point, when the abuse has been going on for ages and there's been a lot of manipulation, a lot of invalidation, you don't even trust yourself. You don't trust your own judgment. You are in survival mode. And the only thing day to day that keeps you going is just making through the day. So you're also not just fight and flight, you're also in fawn and freeze. And it can be very discouraging for somebody who's in that situation to hear being told, well, why don't you just leave? If that was me, I'd have left. You don't know. Nobody knows how you'd act in that situation until you're in it. And victims need support and they need understanding, and they certainly don't need judgment or to be made to feel bad as to why they've stayed in an abusive situation longer than you should, but you shouldn't. Nobody should be in that situation anyway. But unfortunately, it happens all the time. It happens everywhere. Organizations, dynamics, relationships, families, you name it, it exists. So compassion is incredibly important. Even if you don't understand it, I would just say, if you don't know what to say, don't say anything. Just offer somebody you could just say, well, what can I do? Or, even if you can't do anything, just listen. Just don't give your opinions. Don't butt in and give advice or solutions. It's not what they need. What they need is somebody just to listen unconditionally, because people need to get to a point where they have enough strength to leave, and sometimes that can take years, and no one should be judged for it. if you are a PIMO in Jehovah's Witness organisation, please don't feel bad. You're doing your best. I was there. I was a PIMO for a good 4 years before I got to a point where I could write a disassociation letter. And even then it was hard, even though I was done. I was so done, and I was ready and happy with the fact that I'd lose all my so-called friends. And I didn't care. But for a lot of people, that's not an option, especially when you've got your partners, spouses, children, parents, siblings in that organisation, and you risk losing it all. And sometimes it's easier just to live a life for a bit. So please be kind to yourself. Please be patient. And for anybody out there who's watching this who doesn't understand why people stay in abusive situations, like, I really hope you never have to be in that situation to understand it, because no one deserves to be in there, but unfortunately it happens. If there's nothing you can do to help somebody, then at least don't judge them. Don't judge anyone for staying in an abusive situation longer than, well, just staying, because you don't know what goes off behind closed doors. You don't know what dynamics there are. Some of the things that survivors go through, they wouldn't wish it on their worst enemy. And then the worst part is to still be judged over it, and receive that self-righteousness from someone who's never experienced it. So I'll leave it at that. Please be kind to one another, and mostly to yourselves. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.